The annual general meeting of the Ivatt Diesel Re-creation Society was held in the birthplace of 10,000, Derby, at the Aston Court Hotel, opposite the railway station. A diorama with a model of 10,000, showing the locomotive types that go into the construction of the loco, was on display for the attendees, along with an original 10,000 bearing cover and other related items. These included 2 donated Royal Scot headboards, the collection of drawings that had been amassed, Stan Fletcher's cab passes for 10,000, and other assorted items of memorabilia, all on display for the members and visitors to view and enthuse about. Guests of honour were Stan Fletcher, the commissioning engineer for 10,000, and his son Joe.
So there's you with 10,000 and 10,001. Yeah. That must have been on the first run, I would have thought.
First Royal Scot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mark Walker, chairman of the society, showed Stan and Joe the drawings that had been amassed with the help of donations from the members and others.
Yeah, we got far more donations than we expected.
A number of stills from the Royal Scot film were shared with Stan to see if any names would come to light.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's the same chap, I think. Yes, yeah, that's him. Well, it appears that he was the senior guy, wasn't he, at the time?
He was senior of the original, you know, the people that were resident in Derby, and they were mainly on the shunters.
Okay. And what was his name?
Harry Hinckley.
Harry Hinckley.
Yeah.
He seemed to be in charge. There's a clip of him sort of directing the movement of the engines.
He could have been the railway fellow.
This is the chairman of the LMS, and I think it's him. And he's the guy from English Electric.
English Electric, yes.
There's a 10A diesel shop, you know, and there's a foreman in there.
Well, they were written on the back of some of these. Probably the same as you've got here, a request for prints of these.
Yeah. Same sort of thing.
But these were the names of different people, different groups of people at different stages.
We had an email, I think I forwarded it to you, and I can't remember the chap's name, but he said he was an apprentice when you were just about to retire.
Yeah.
And he said, I bet Stan won't remember me.
Yeah.
Said, well, no, possibly not.
Well, you did sort of remember him, didn't you? And because he lives in the Isle of Man now.
Yes.
Yeah.
And unfortunately he can't come to the meeting, is what I understood. So, yeah. But he was wasn't he in the design office in, was that in Bradford?
Several design offices, sort of, you know,
I think he said in the email where he was.
Bradford was probably,
Prior to the meeting, Mark took the opportunity for a second interview with Stan to find out more about his adventures with 10,000 and further afield.
So, good morning, Stan.
Morning.
Welcome back. We asked you a lot of questions last year, and following that, we've got a few more follow-up questions. We've also had some interest from the BBC, who've sent some questions for us to ask you. So, launching straight into those, the BBC did a film back in 1949 of the first Royal Scot, the first double-head diesel.
Yes.
And they have that film and they want to know a bit more about it. What they would like to know is, how did you feel at the time about being on the first diesel Royal Scot, the first double-head diesel? Because you were right at the centre of it.
That was the aim, sort of, to be with the Royal Scot. That's what the locomotives were built to do.
So when they started, the aim was...
And therefore, the fact that we had achieved that was a very good start, I thought.
Yeah.
And then, particularly when I saw what they were doing on it, sort of that if you start thinking how big that train was, I reckon it must have been one of the biggest trains that ever ran on that line.
At that time, yeah.
Because, I mean, they didn't have any platform either in Euston or Glasgow that could take the train.
Okay.
And they had to get the train on and then bring the loco just before they went off. Right,
okay. And looking back now, how does it feel having been part of the first double head, the first Royal Scot, the first diesel Royal Scot?
Well, I was sorry that more wasn't made of it, because I think it deserved to have a lot more made of it. In that, the fact that he was hauling this terrific train, and they did it with no problem at all, really. I mean, we had the problem of leaking air pipes, sort of, and things like that. But I mean, in actual running of the locomotive, the fact that you get a pipe breaking by vibrations is not really against the locomotive as such. That's why you run these prototypes. These are the sort of things that you expect might happen that you don't allow for.
So, looking back now, how do you feel about the locos being scrapped in 68?
Well, I couldn't believe it. I really couldn't believe it when I came back. I think it was from Malaya. I won't be sure on that point. But when they said it'd been scrapped, I just couldn't believe it. When you think of all the effort that was being put into making sort of steam locomotives again and things like that. And I think there should be really a law that stops you doing such a thing. Because you saw all these locomotives stuck in sidings all over the country there, and why didn't they just scrap one of those? Instead of scrapping the first off. I mean, when you have a lot of them, it don't make any difference, but if you only one,
absolutely,
then
yes.
If that goes, that you don't have a one.
No. What do you think about our chances of rebuilding 10,000?
Well, I had my doubts, but I'm pleased over the last few months that we really seem to be getting down to it. Again, we would have had a better chance, I think, had they not scrapped them. If they'd just failed a little bit or something, if they'd left us with something to start with.
Yes.
Now I think it is having to be considered to be a new locomotive.
Yes, yeah.
And because of that, you have to meet the conditions today.
Yeah. With using the chassis from the Class 58, we've
Well-
managed to overcome some of the flexibility, because I remember you said the original loco did flex a bit too much around the corners.
Yeah.
So we've managed to overcome one or two of those problems.
Yeah.
But yes, as you say, it would be nice if we had something to start with. So when you were at Derby Works and they were
Yes.
building the loco, it obviously took quite a few months to build.
I think we said from start to finish took 6 months.
6 months. So we know well what you did when they were running. You spent a lot of time in the engine room or in the cabin. And
Yes.
what did you do for 6 months at Derby Works?
Well, I was working on it.
So you were actually involved in the building of it?
Yes, but, did the wiring and things like that.
Okay.
Yes, and tested them out, and yes.
Was there any sort of redesign as you went along? Because it was a new thing. Was there a case of, well, this is clearly not going to work, we need to redesign?
Well, I don't think you'd call it redesign. I think it was really designed as you went along in order to get that.
Because I've noticed from the drawings, lots of the drawings are dated 1947, 1948, 49. Some of the
Yes.
drawings were drawn after.
Well, this is the thing, that as you come across changes, then this has to be recorded.
Yeah.
And that's why you get these wide variety of dates.
Somebody has noted that in some of the pictures, there is someone in white overalls in the second man's seat at the front of the loco, sitting in the second man's seat.
Yeah.
Did you have anything to do when you were on the loco, or are they just having a rest, having a sit down?
Well, on the locomotive, I don't know whether they saw the instruments that were on there. But
I've seen the pictures of the cab instruments, yes.
They're literally probably 100 readings to be taken.
Yeah.
at various times in the run. And that is what we, plus the fact that we had 8 copies to make, to all the people who think it's quite easy, oh, put me down for a copy. But the thing is that with none of this copying machines and things like that,
No.
it was a bit of carbon paper, and so that was how the copy was made. And it's a bit of a laborious business, I can assure you.
Yes, we've got some of your papers from the
Yes.
time with hundreds and hundreds
Yes.
of numbers. It's, who do you remember from the 10,000 design team at Derby or English Electric? Are there any characters that stand out from Derby or English Electric that you remember?
There are about 6 of us used to travel with the locomotives. That, but,
Oh, the chaps in the white overalls.
and, yes, Lord Nelson and Ivatt, at the end of the war, they went to America to have a look at, that's how it was described, have a look at their locomotives. And when they came back, they decided that they would have a go at making locomotives themselves. And as regards the English Electric, what that meant was that they were started to build up a team to do this. And this is where I came into it in the first place, because I was on minesweepers at that time, and I thought it would be quite a good follow-up to what I'd been doing on the minesweepers, which the latest American ones, they had a diesel engine which was there for propulsion, but it was also there purely for creating magnetic fields, whereas on the locomotives it was for hauling the train.
Yeah.
And
So did you work strictly on the electrical side, or were you involved with the engines and
I was
the...
mainly on the electrical side. And my chief at the time was Lieutenant Commander Peter Smith, I think his name was. He was in charge from Harwich Depot. And I was, at that time, the flotilla electrical officer, which was operating from there, and I came under him. But actually I was on the Ostend and things like that, you know, on the runs to Germany.
The obviously we talk about the sort of 1947 to 1949 period where you spent a lot of time on the locos, and then you went off around the world doing other things in other countries. What was it like working abroad in 1949? That must have been, I mean, these days it's you jump on a plane and go off around the world. It was, you know,
Well,
not such a common thing back then.
It's interesting that going out to Australia, it took me a week to get to Sydney,
Yeah.
and then a week to Melbourne, and then a week to Adelaide.
Yeah. So were you well received with your new diesels, or were they still very keen on steam and not happy about diesels, or were they happy to see you?
I think they're quite keen, because it was very much like the English side, really, in that it was designed, the locomotive was designed by the railways, and then the English Electric came in to produce the electrical part of it.
So were they popular in Australia and Malaya, the new diesels? Popular with the crews, I would imagine.
Well, I think everywhere they're popular with the crew, where they could sit down and,
Warm and dry.
Yeah, and enjoy it. Particularly firemen who got away with doing nothing, more or less. In fact, I persuaded them in Australia to do quite a few things. For example, to check around at where the fire extinguishers were, because this was one of the problems I had in UK, that we had quite a few fires, bogey fires in particular, and the response from the crew was when I used to say, "That's a fire warning," and they said, "Oh yes, what are you going to do about it?" And I ended up as a firefighter, crawling under the locomotive, you know, with hand extinguishers and things like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was very disappointed with that side of it.
It must have been a strange change for a fireman who was used to shoveling coal to
Well,
be
it was.
to looking after a train heating boiler and.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. I think they used to go on the town, more or less, in London and come back to sleep in the back. Because they didn't really have anything to do, but they could have helped by keep clean. As I say, in Australia, I got them at least to find out where the fire extinguishers were, because they had to fill in a form, which I prepared for them, and I got them to switch. The fire extinguishers were all numbered. And what I used to do was to get people to switch them round so that they had to number the things. But in order to do that, they had to find where the fire extinguisher was.
Excellent. So the most of the locos abroad were on a bigger loading gauge.
Yes.
Were they easier to work on because they were so much bigger, especially in Australia? I've seen some
Yeah.
pictures of the 900 class. The cabs were huge.
Well, they varied. I think it's Port Pirie. Where was it 5 or 6 different gauges? The main street, I think, in Port Pirie when I was there was also the railway station, and they had 5 or 6 gauges going down there.
But being inside the engine room on a larger engine, was that easier to work? Must have been more space.
Personally, I didn't notice so much difference in the size. Yeah, probably was, but I wasn't there for checking gauges. As soon as we got a contract, then I was sent out to these places where I would make a study of what the facilities they already had, and then advise them on what facilities they should be having, and also that how the workshop, so that they could do sort of jobs, would be laid out in order to make it easier to get a quick turnaround.
Did they listen to you?
But like there, I mean that you had to sort of train the storage facilities because they couldn't take. I used to tell them they wanted so many cylinder heads and things like that, which would be stripped down and they would be spared so that you had a quick turnaround of these things. And the railway stores said, "Oh, you can't do that." I said, "Well, that's why I've suggested you order them. They're just going to be stuck in the store otherwise. You got them there so you could get them used so that they are repaired, ready for fitting onto the locomotive. Not to somebody go and get it out of the store and start working on it."
I think one of the problems that the early diesels had was sharing a shed with steam locos, and they didn't cope very well with the smoke and the soot.
I didn't notice anything very much on that, no. No, they seemed to be all right, really.
So did they listen to you in the end when you said this is how you need to lay it out and this is what you need to do?
Yes, I think the first one actually was the chief of the outside department, a fellow called Tom Stockings. I think he went to Malaya doing more or less this sort of thing, and he unfortunately was taken sick there and returned to hospital in London, and I was sent to see him in hospital, and then I took over from him.
All right, okay.
Doing that sort of in Malaya. I think I went to Malaya 5, 6 times because It's not only that, they got it tied up with the instructions, and finally built an action school there for training and central works.
So, how long were you with the twins after that first Royal Scot run? So that was middle of 1949. I think you said
Well,
it was...
it can't have been very long, because I went out to Australia in 1951.
So, a year and a half, couple of years then.
I think about April, I think I went
So that-
to Australia.
That period after the first Royal Scot run, was that just up and down on the Royal Scots?
Yes, mainly,
And-
yes.
And how did they perform? Were there problems you didn't expect, or were they pretty good?
I thought they went very well. I did. I worked it out on one occasion because actually I've kept diaries since I was 13. Not that it's one of these things, pocket diary,
Yeah.
with 2 lines, more an appointment diary than something you can write a history of anything.
Did you go abroad and just move from one country to another
No,
another, or was it
no.
going out and coming
Just,
back?
it's
and
just as I was required.
okay, yeah.
Yeah, just say.
But you stayed with.
I mean, it was such that I had to keep my injections up to date. Let's put it that way. That was the frequency, that it takes certain time for certain injections to work, so that I could go about a day or two, sort of.
And you were telling us that you nearly weren't here at all after your accident with the loco in Australia.
Well, let's say I was going for pleasure, I thought. I was going to go.
Oh, so you weren't working?
I was going for a fishing week. Well, it was my first break. Since I'd gone to Australia.
All right.
I'd already been there sort of quite a few months. And I got this offer for this fellow going down for this fishing weekend, which I was really looking forward to, but we never accomplished it. But so we went straight from work on the Friday night, and we were just watching how we're going along, and say the only illumination and all that street lighting or anything like that.
No street lights.
You just there the rail track and the roads were running parallel, and occasionally here and there's a level crossing where you could change over. But we didn't know that. I wasn't driving, and
So you said you saw the light coming, so you stopped.
yes, well,
And didn't realise you'd
we
stopped on
didn't
the
know
crossing.
whether it was coming or what. We were just blinded by this light. Because like a lot of these, they have these fantastic headlights on these things. It's all right for the driver there, but if you're going the other way, you're just blinded. And we had to stop because of the fact we just didn't know where we were. We didn't know whether we were on the track or road or what. We just stopped. And then there was a big bang as went through the windscreen because we'd stopped on the level crossing, unfortunately. But we didn't know it stopped there. We just stopped.
So when you'd finished travelling the world and you came back to GEC, what you were there for the rest of your working life, I think. What else were you involved in afterwards?
I did so many jobs, really. I mean, I was working on the shop floors, helping the work superintendent, and I had a special responsibility to see the equipment we were supplying for the Admiralty. See, that was all right. This was mainly stuff for the minesweepers and also for the submarines.
Oh, yeah.
It's a job thinking of these things at the time,
Yeah.
quickly.
So it wasn't all railways that you did?
Pardon?
It wasn't all railways, your
No,
work?
no. But that was their specialty. They'd been doing it for years, that sort of work.
So were you involved with any of the later loco designs, the Class 40s or the Deltics?
I was lined up to go with the Deltic, but it never came to pass.
Right.
I went to see the engine and things like that, but
And you were going to be the engineer on the loco, like you were with the twins?
that was the idea. But
Yeah.
I never.
So what happened there?
I didn't get involved at all with the Deltic. I did all kinds of jobs. I was in charge of the instruction books, sort of, and catalogues. So I checked with the department, and I didn't have anybody. They were doing it, but they never had any training in it. So I had a word with the Bradford Technical College, and actually our chief engineer had already done this, so I had a lead from him. He had found difficulty in having people on the stands whenever we had an exhibition for different languages. If you spoke English, then you were all right if you visited the stand, but if you spoke French or German or something like that, I'm afraid you'd had your chips as you can't get into some information. So he had circulated asking anybody that had had some instruction on this in sort of German or French, I think it was, the two. He's like, then he arranged with the Bradford Technical College that they would take these people. They had a period in work, and then also they had tea when you were also being taught in these languages. And then, I say, you had this in the evening, sort of. So they made it easier to do this. So when I found that I had people that had done the training, I had a word with Bradford Tech, and they did more or less the same, and we were on to City and Guilds courses.
Going back to the locos that were built for other countries, having been involved with the twins, were there any improvements that were made in the later locos that went abroad?
Well, there must have been. I mean, it was an ongoing thing to improve on all these things, but I couldn't stop.
I think from what I've read, the most unreliable part on the twins was the carriage warming, the train heating boilers. There seemed to be a lot of trouble keeping those
Trouble,
going.
yes.
Yeah.
Nightmare,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, well, it was the same on it was useful on occasions, actually, because we got a leak in water seal when on the 10,000 and 10,001, and so I managed to pinch some water from the boiler there and then gentle feed going into the engine to compensate for this and own the thing. So I'm afraid it's the wastewater is spread from London to Glasgow.
So what was the problem with the train heating boilers? Would they just break down or catch fire? Or?
Well, I wasn't involved with those really,
Oh, right.
but that's the sort of thing that we used to get fires on the thing, yeah. And they didn't sort of heat the trains.
Well, they weren't very effective.
Nobody, no. No. But I say I had enough worries. I have done papers for the mechanical engineers. There are 2 papers there that I've done based on what I have been doing as regards these things. So
We'll have to look those up.
I can't even remember the title. I used to have these, but
You wrote the papers, then you went lecturing on those?
well, whenever you do a paper with the mechanical engineers or electrical engineers or any of those, then normally it is first published buy the thing, and then you go around, usually in the UK, or if you are abroad quite often, and you go into there, they let you give the paper there. The Nottingham University used to close their teaching facilities each year, and Lama used to invite senior engineers and people like that to come over to UK for a residential course. They used to be accommodated in the Nottingham University, and we used to give these talks, and they used to take them to go see various things, works and things like that. It wasn't holiday or anything. I was asked to give a talk on these sort of children, and then they were printed, and all these things were all got together. And
So did you enjoy the speaking, or were you happier with a screwdriver in your hand in the workshop? Which did you prefer?
well, it makes a change, doesn't it? Variety spice of life, you know what to say.
Yes.
Have a bit of spice. But you will see there the type of people that were in. I think there is a list on a lot of these courses. We also used to go down to the Derby, to the School of Transport, who were running courses, and Martin Attic, who was my senior in the technical department, used to take me down there with him. The idea being that if on their course there any questions came along, then they posed it to us for a reply. Not that I'm saying that we knew everything about these, dimensions and things like that. People used to ask for these sort of details, but if we didn't know it, then we would find out.
I've got a list of participants from the
Yes.
second Lama course in 1968, and it was a very international affair.
Yes,
the
it
list here:
was.
Argentina, Burma, Chile, Mexico, Jordan, Nigeria, Peru. people
Well,
from
that's the
all
type
over
of
the
thing
world.
that I'm speaking of. That I said, I don't know whether it still goes on. I don't know. I haven't heard for a few years. But it all takes time to prepare,
Yes.
because it wasn't sort of just carry on. I was given a particular thing to do, so I had to sort of go from scratch. We started also, we had a residential training course when we started with the locomotives on British Rail, and this was at Newley Willows. I trained two people there to run these courses, and they were sort of residential. They were, I think we ran them for a month. The course took a month, but after a time I found that they were having difficulties with the pupils, let's put it that way, in that they were finding a bit of a struggle to do it quick enough. So we extended it to 6 weeks in effect, where we had the 2 weeks, and then there'd be a 2-week break when they could go back home and renew relations, I suppose. And, yeah.
So, one last question. Last week, you celebrated your 99th birthday.
Yeah.
And this is just a question from me. If you, looking back on 99 years, what is the one thing that you would point at and say, I did that, I'm proud of that?
Well, as things are, I suppose I'm quite pleased that I was involved in this lot. I mean, I run about with the loco in UK. I did, I think, 150,000 miles on the locos there, which is a fair bit of running about.
Yes, I see people now saying, "Oh, I've had 1,000 miles behind this engine," but 150,000 is quite something.
It helped my courtship as well.
Okay, how's that?
Well, the thing was that I met my wife to be on the Isle of Wight when I was on holiday, and she lived in London and she taught in London. So coming in sort of at 6 o'clock from on the Royal Scot was a very convenient time for her to be there, and we'd nip off for meals or show or something.
Excellent. So it all works out well.
So I went on for a while until I proposed to her, and next week they said we wanted to go to Australia for 2 years. Unfortunately, she just lost her father, and she didn't want to leave her mother. So we had 2 years courtship.
Oh, right.
Which wasn't there because 2 years courtship was one phone call. When I see people ringing up every day or something like that, but in those days from Australia, you had to book, and you had to go into Adelaide, then you had to wait to put in a phone box until it was your turn to come, and then it was all by wire.
Yeah.
And I made a mistake of saying it's like waiting for the dentist. And 6 minutes later, I managed to persuade her that my teeth was all right. I hadn't been waiting to the dentist at all. And so that was the... Got 6 quid did that in those days in order to just do that. And, so...
Well, you must have been a memorable character if 2 years later she still remembered you.
Yeah. I did keep in correspondence with her. I used to write every other day.
Excellent.
Yeah.
There was much interest in all the detailed information that had been gathered that will go not only to reconstruct 10,000, but also tell its story and importance in the development of railway technology in the UK. The meeting included a detailed rundown of the work undertaken so far, the engineering plan, and an overview of the crucial fundraising activities. The gathering was rounded off by a presentation to Stan Fletcher.
Yes, one of the other reasons that we had a break was to get these two in the room. There is another reason why they are here. As some of you will know, I didn't give Stan very much of an introduction when we started, but he is the president of the group. He is the centre of what we do. And although he kind of downplays it a bit, just been discovering today, he absolutely loves 10,000 and talks about it a lot, apparently. And you may know it was his birthday last week. He was a grand total of 99 last week. When I met you in September, I was told, I think he's 92. He looks about 92. It turns out he was 98. It was his birthday last week. And because it's your birthday, we got you a little present. So that's what these two are here for. So if you just, in fact, if you're around here, look, come around here. Come around here so Alan can see you with the camera. So what we've got is one of the works plates that we've had made for the loco. Can you hold it up so everybody can see it, Kieran? Steph, can you read what it says on there? Nice and loud.
Presented to Stanley Fletcher, President of the Ivatt Diesel Re-creation Society, on the occasion of his 99th birthday.
So there you go. So this is... there you go, it's a bit heavy. All right.
God, well, I'm strong enough to hold this.
If you have been enthused by the project and would like to get involved in any way, please visit our website to find out more. Thank you.